Valentina Roberts is a head porter in Ghana's capital of Accra. Roberts migrated to the capital from the highly impoverished north.
My name is Valentina Roberts. I live in this community in Accra. It's my new home.
Amid a struggle to get food and a sewing machine to start her dressmaking business, Roberts decided to relocate to the city. Here, she can work and make some money to feed herself and her family. The international poverty line is set at $2.15 per person per day. Roberts earns $1.50 daily. That makes her one of the 14 million Ghanaians considered dimensionally poor in a country with abundance of minerals and natural resources. Dr. Steve Mantiel is a policy analyst with the Ghana Integrated Social Development Center, ISODEC. He believes there is very little social protection for people like Valentina Roberts because the country is not earning enough from its mineral resources and commodity exports.
If we're able to plug the loopholes and actually even save or prevent about half of the revenues from leaving this country, we wouldn't be where we are today, needing international bailout.
Like Ghana, the People's Republic of Laos has a lot of economic challenges to deal with a minimum wage of $100 per month. Up to 18% of the population still lived below the poverty line as of 2018. And for every 1,000 babies born in Laos, 44 died before their 5th birthday. Domestic revenue mobilization remains low in Laos compared with other developing countries. 14% of GDP in Laos compared to roughly 20% in neighboring Cambodia and Thailand as of 2018. The situation gives rise to a need to shore up revenues to pull a lot more people out of poverty in Laos. Both Ghana and Laos are major trading partners of Switzerland. The economy of Switzerland is one of the world's most advanced and highly developed free markets. The service sector has come to play a significant economic role, particularly the Swiss banking industry and tourism.
Big part of the Swiss wealth is actually generated over international trade relations. Switzerland was for a long time one of the major commodity trader in the world, not only since the 70s or so, but for about 200-300 years, also deeply rooted in colonial economic relations.
And the situation is not any different for many resource-rich economies around the world.
Right now, we have a lot of, gaps in infrastructure, roads. We have gaps in terms of even health facilities, schools, education. I just came back from a village in the Ashanti region, a village where the roads were so bad, it took us lots of hours to get there. You get there, there are no hospitals, people need a hospital, there are no doctors, there are no nurses. But all these things require resources. So if we are losing resources, and even if you go to mining communities, one of the things you realize is that even though there's mining there, there's supposed to be a rich place, but they are poor.
Why are these countries so rich in natural resources, struggling to provide basic amenities for some of their people? Why is healthcare such a problem in countries so blessed with huge deposits of gold, copper, and other minerals? These are countries out of which huge volumes of commodities are exported to destinations around the world each year. The answers to this may be rooted in what some describe as resource curse, also known as the paradox of plenty, or the poverty paradox. It describes a situation where countries with abundance of natural resources have less economic growth and worse development outcomes than countries with less natural resources. There are many theories and a lot of debate about the reasons for such outcomes. But most experts believe resource curse is not universal and affects certain countries under certain conditions. There is also the issue of capital flight born out of illicit financial flows, or IFFs.
Illicit financial flows are any flow of money that is transferred from one country to another, that is illegally earned or illegally transferred or illegally used.
They deprive particularly also low-income countries of a lot of income that they actually would need to fund their social services and the development of the country. So estimations vary, of course, a lot, but one talks between kind of $250 and $500 billion a year. So it's a massive, significant problem. And it's illicit because it's not always illegal. It's very often also kind of within the boundary of what is exactly legally speaking still allowed, but it's kind of at the edge and kind of in a gray zone between illicit and illegal.
At a high level, IFFs can be split into channels driven by commercial activities, for example, international trade, finance, and investment flows, as well as explicitly illegal activities like money laundering, smuggling, etc. The most important channel that we focus on in our research is illicit financial flows related to international trade in commodities, since this is a critical source of income and tax revenue for developing countries.
Where our research focuses on is on assisting the host countries to have access to proper data so that they can evaluate and the correct price of exports of commodities.
Authorities responsible for managing the natural resource have limited expertise and knowledge on the broad issue of illicit financial flows, specific capacity for inspecting and monitoring natural resource exports. These limitations could constrain the ability to detect and contain the practice of illicit financial flows in Laos.
We are here to register our displeasure on the kind of governance being administered on we the Ghanaian people. Corruption everywhere, unemployment everywhere, high cost of living, high transportation fares, high fuel prices, and we've come here today to register our displeasure. And this police officer, very unprofessional one,
saying these protesters are fair to government in the sense that their agitations and public protests are not to undermine the legitimacy of the state. Often they are issue-based and they are intended to prompt government to do the right things, to be able to generate the resources that is needed to provide development and services to our people. Companies consistently paid the very minimum of that range, which was 3%. Meanwhile, the range was on the basis of their profitability. So if you continue to pay the minimum, then you are actually suggesting that you are not making profit. But this happens, especially even during times of boom, when gold prices are record high.
In both the gold and cocoa exports arenas, the lack of capacity of the Ghana Revenue Authority to measure the quality and quantity of exports was one of the major problems identified during the research.
It's a moral issue, and I would challenge all companies who claim to be socially responsible to ensure that they avoid the use of tax avoidance techniques to, to siphon money out of the economy. Because whatever investments that government make with the revenues from their activities is beneficiary to their operations.
Beyond its own findings through its comprehensive research work, the Curbing IFFs project has engaged various stakeholders on the way forward as it pushes to influence policy to change the narrative on illicit financial flows. At the University of Bern, Professor Carbonier and his team hosted experts and representatives of a number of civil society groups and international bodies to brainstorm and find solutions to IFFs.
This is a very timely moment to engage further in the conversation with key stakeholders on what policy solutions, what technological innovation we can use to address the problem.
These were part of the reasons a coalition of Swiss civil society organizations decided to champion the Responsible Business Initiative, RBI, that would, as the name suggests, ensure Swiss multinationals were more responsible in their dealings with host countries. But the RBI was just rejected at the ballot, although a lot of people supported it. That leaves the commodity trading sector still open to a lot of abuse in Switzerland. At the Center for Development and Environment in Bern, two researchers, Irene Moseli and Elizabeth Borghi-Bananomi, have been doing a lot of work on how much Swiss companies may be complicit in transfer pricing, trade misinvoicing, and other risks for illicit financial flows.
Perhaps we could focus a bit on the regulatory loopholes. What are the areas where offshore wealth centers, countries like Switzerland, can step in? And one of these areas, according to our research, is the regulation, for example, of the intermediaries. Is something very important where you can take targeted policy interventions that might possibly lead to policy change if effectively deployed. Make professional service firms accountable.
This is why many professional service firms, including law firms, have been found to have facilitated the illicit flow of finance from resource-rich countries. In recent times, the Swiss Parliament has taken a keen interest in issues related to illicit financial flows with a view to curb it. In May 2022, a parliamentary motion was submitted to the National Council, the lower house of the Federal Assembly of Switzerland. If approved, the motion would instruct the Federal Council, the highest executive authority in the country, to present a report on how Switzerland could improve transparency of financial flows. The motion was grounded on two publications from the Curbing IFFs project and other studies. But, as it were, every party within the parliament has its own opinions about illicit financial flows.
Ich denke, man muss ein bisschen anfangen bei der Stellung der Schweiz in der Welt. Die Schweiz hat ja wie zwei Gesichter. Auf der einen Seite ein Sonnengesicht. Also wir sind eine kleine, neutrale Nation, ein Ort auch der guten Dienste und der Menschenrechte. Das Rote Kreuz wurde hier gegründet, das Internationale. In Genf ist das UNO-Hochkommissariat für Menschenrechte, für Flüchtlinge untergebracht. Wir sind Depositärstaat des humanitären Völkerrechts. Also das sind die schönen Seiten. Es gibt aber auch Schattenseiten und ich glaube, das ist das große Problem, das wir haben. Die Schweiz war historisch immer so eine Art sekundär-imperialistisches Land und die Schweizer Regierung ist hier ganz klar ein Teil des Problems, weil sie dieses Geschäftsmodell verteidigt.
Carlos Somaruga of the Socialist Party agrees.
Mais il faut aussi que les acteurs économiques et juridiques, à savoir d'une part les entreprises et les avocats, voire les fiduciaires qui soutiennent ces entreprises dans le Conseil, soient mieux régulés et il y ait un certain nombre d'éléments dans la loi qui obligent à plus de transparence en matière de prix de transfert.
We also got to speak to Elizabeth Schneider of the Centre Party. While admitting that IFFs are a problem, she believes the resource-rich host countries should come up with their own solutions to the problem.
We don't know the situation in your country. Yeah. It's you. You have to make regulations for your country, not we in Switzerland. So that's my opinion.
That may be largely true, but often procedural rules hinder the application of such laws. But while Swiss officials explore these options, it's obvious that most illicit financial flows out of Laos and Ghana come down to a lack of accurate information. This is information on both quality and quantity of products being exported or imported.
I think it's important that developing countries have clear and firm positions as well. But that brings in another question in international dimension. Where are actually these rules negotiated? And currently they are negotiated at the OECD, which is an institution dominated by industrialized countries, while alternatively a UN negotiation platform would give every country the same vote to negotiate.
Indeed, resource-rich developing countries deserve fairness in the exploitation of their resources. Foreign companies operating in these host countries must work closely with the local authorities to ensure transparency in the declaration of data on the export of commodities.
Another solution is to use the technology we have today with satellite imagery techniques in order to trace and track gold. You can, of course, use the famous blockchain technology once you are sure that you have the right information on the origin of gold, and through smart containers and other such devices, you can really make sure that the traceability of the origin and the transport of gold is under check.
After years of intensive study, as well as consultation with industry, the Kebbi IFFs team concludes that fighting the problem requires simplified methods. That obviously must be the drive to win the fight against illicit financial flows. From a political and practical standpoint, a sensible course of action is to reap low-hanging fruits while laying the foundations for longer-term policy responses. Practical short-term interventions that could be put in place immediately while simultaneously moving forward towards longer-term, more structural reform options. But these must be fast enough to ensure Valentina Roberts, who is sleeping rough at Agbogbloshie in Ghana, and many people like her in resource-rich developing countries, can have a semblance of a better life.